Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Business to Business here at Leicester Tigers. It's our regular interviews with our partners in order to find out more about themselves and their businesses as we move forward. And today we're joined by the CEO of our technical partner, Samurai Sportswear, Stefano Schivo. So a very warm welcome, Stefano, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. Regular format of the podcast as such really is that we relate it to a rugby game. So we have the warm-up or the preparation where we want to talk about you and you as a person and your culture and things like that, Stefano. First half, we'll talk a bit about your business as well. And then we'll finish with a bit of sport and victory, hopefully, at the end of it as such, really. So first question, Stefano, talk us through your background today. You've gone from like an investment and finance background into owning a pretty funky sportswear brand. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, my background, obviously, I'm Italian by origin. I did move into the UK and London, particularly in 2014, so almost 8-9 years ago, following my studies in France, in Paris. And when I moved to London, I moved to join the investment banking industry, whereby I was advising large investors into buying and selling businesses, really, particularly in the energy and infrastructure sector, but across other business, industrials, and generally other niches as well. And so somehow that has been my parkour for 6 years in London. And the idea of doing something on my own has always been on the back of my mind. I did a startup in my early 20s in Italy that did not achieve the successes we wanted to, but we did build a team and develop these mobile-based application back in 2011, 2012, when it was early days for those type of products. And so the idea of doing something on my own has always been there. And after following 6 years in advising people in buying and selling businesses, I was like, maybe I could combine my willingness to do something on my own with the expertise I gain in buying and obviously valuing and analyzing and trying to run businesses, really, and advising CEOs and CFOs in running businesses. So it was COVID time, really, and I was screening the UK market for businesses that were potentially need for fresh ideas and fresh capital and were willing to consider an investment. Samurai was one of those that I was looking at, and obviously my passion for sports. I used to be a footballer until I was 19, 20 years old, and my passion for sport and then the will to progress this project made me think that Samurai was a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity because the been around for 25 years, is very well known in the rugby niche, and it needed a bit more vision about where to go next, and that's what we came to do, really, to try and transform and build Samurai into the most aspirational and forward-thinking rugby-related brand, really.
Nice. And 2 points for people who have never bought or considered, been in that sphere as such. You say screening. Is there like a database, or is it all in your head in terms of how these opportunities present themselves to you?
There are different places where you can look for businesses, and particularly smaller businesses, of course, that maybe are not up under the radar of the newspapers and maybe are more regionally located. There is a database called Business for Sales, for example, where a smaller business are put up for sales or for investments, which is a sort of portal where people can find who, and it goes from the small retail shop to a business like Samurai. At the time, actually, they weren't really in that portal. They were like someone suggested them to post there when they were doing a capital raise, and I found out and then reached out directly to the entrepreneur, which is obviously still part of our business, and we started conversations from there. The time which is always key in everything you do in business. Being at the right time at the right place. Sometimes it's, I believe that, preparation is a strong preparation is what brings you luck. But obviously you need sometimes to be prepared to get the opportunity, really.
Yeah, and that's a good sew into you as a person, and you talk about your values as such. So, what are your values as a person, entrepreneur, and head of a business case?
For me, on a personal level, for me, adaptability is one of the most important skill set that you can have, and values I really believe into, because at every stage of your business and your career, even, you need to be able to adapt to a different scenario. And every time you progress to a different role, doesn't matter if it's within a career path or within a business, in terms of growth of the business, your requirements and what you are asked to be doing is completely different. And sometimes, and no one will ever prepare you for it completely. And so being able to adapt to the situation and understand that you need to change is key for me. The second one, which is a bit of a cliche, but it's really being resilient, and knowing that one thing I actually learn a lot more in the last couple of years being doing this job versus being in the board is that tomorrow is another day. And if you do behave well with people and you have good relationship and you build your support network, people are willing to help and support you through what might seem at first unsurmountable difficulties. But then you find out that by thinking about it, by talking to people, by trying to say tomorrow is another day, then they get results. So for me, resilience and adaptability are key values for both my personal life and business, really.
Good. And when we talk about values as such, and some people call them non-negotiables, is that you and your personal values, or are they values you employ into your staff and your values and culture, the business of Sam, about how you want your members to behave or represent the brand as such? Or do you have a separate kind of list of non-negotiables for those guys?
So I think obviously being a smaller scale business, everything you do, and particularly when you are in the management position, reflects on the way your staff behaves and do their jobs on a daily basis. We have, as a brand, we embrace our mantra of pushing forward, which is indeed a combination of adaptability and resilience, really. For us, pushing forward is really a non-negotiable message that we are spreading across obviously our team, but as well as our partners like yourself and our customers, to try and say, regardless of what you're doing, regardless of the hurdle, regardless of what you're facing, you need to keep going. You need to find a way to break through and to push forward to achieve what ultimately is your mission, what ultimately is your ultimate goal, and the next stage of your development, personal and as a business.
It's interesting because obviously you're fresh to a pretty established business as such, and you look at Samurai's website and you look at courage, dedication, integrity, purity within that push forward piece. What process did you go from buying the business, establishing what you want to achieve, and then getting that buy-in? How did that process roll out from your time, from start to kind of where you're at today, and the onboarding piece?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to lie, it's not an easy process. It's not a process that is without hurdle. And one key secret to it is time and leading by example. Because obviously at the beginning, when you do speak about indeed our core 4 values that you just described, incorporated in our push forward mantra, obviously they are just words. They're words that do not mean anything to anyone. So if you don't start behaving and living by them and showing that by example, you're in every situation, you're trying to be a bit more courageous. And so go a bit outside of your comfort zone, but still acting with integrity. So be very respectful and transparent to your partners and your customers, and try not to be harming them. And then the dedication part, which is indeed, again, close to the pushing forward mantra, is like the hard work needs to be there regardless, day in, day out, because that will be every single day we put a brick that will build the wall and build the stairs that will bring us where we want to go to. So all of these values, the process is a process made by a lot of communication. So talking about those, like every time there is a chance where you can use the word push forward, use it in emails, in meetings within the team and with customers, just trying to get people used to hear it, and because then what it does is that it immediately incorporates in their mindset, and then they start living by it. And then obviously I am a strong believer in leading by example. So if people sees you, particularly when you are a small business where people can see you, or a smaller scale team, like obviously leading by example is key, because you cannot tell people to believe in something if you then know you're not respecting those values or not behaving by those values yourself.
Yeah, no, and I completely, as a club that has similar sort of values, and many businesses do, of course, nowadays, it makes a lot of sense from that point of view. And focusing kind of on Samurai as a brand, you've talked about kind of your entry into the purchase and what have you, but it's a brand that's pretty synonymous with rugby, like you say, and cricket. And kind of what's your view on, yes, you stay true to it, but what does the next stage, what does success look like for you and Samurai kind of side by side moving forward?
Absolutely. So part of the journey that we are on as a brand, obviously, as I was mentioning in the beginning, Samurai has been a kit supplier for 25 years. And really our goal is, as a business model, is trying to move away to just be a kit supplier and becoming a full-fledged sportswear brand. What that means is that we will be offering our products and our high-quality products, sportswear and activewear, to our partners like yourself and clubs and in the education sector, as well as across 3 or 4 of the key sports that we cover, which are rugby, cricket, hockey, and netball. But really, it's about also offering a proposition to the individuals, to individual customers that could see Samurai as a brand they could buy from as an individual, and by proposing retail ranges directly to consumers through our website and our e-commerce, they are more appealing. And so that because we strongly believe that the rugby community has been a bit underserved by the bigger brands that are out there, and there isn't really a rugby related brand that is a bit more aspirational, a bit more cool, if you pass me the term, but a bit more a brand that you want to be part of, a community you want to be part of, and they still very much engaged and conscious that the community is the rugby community. And for me, rugby is not just on the pitch. It's not just when you play rugby. Rugby means the young guy that plays at school, but then goes for a run with his friends, goes to the gym. There are people that do rugby and then go to CrossFit. There are people that then, obviously have a community that goes to the pub, being a rugby lad or rugby girl, and trying to be part of that. Giving an identity to that community is something that has, in my opinion, been missed so far. And no other brand like ourselves so much embedded in that culture, because no one in the rugby community needs to be explained to who Samurai is and why is Samurai doing anything for rugby. Like, we know that, like the people, we have 25 years of heritage in that space. So we have that credibility. What we're trying to do is serving our audience, and the audience stays in the space with a more appealing and attractive and aspirational proposition, not only from a product perspective, but also from a brand perspective. The push forward mantra indeed is linked as well to what you do on the pitch as a rugby player, but as well as a community. And so it's really comparing to brands that we have seen in recent times that have been starting from our community and then successfully branched out from there.
Cool. This is a loaded question because, like us, your core business is in the sport in industry. But what does, in terms of the marketing of a product, from your experience, how important is sport to you? Which is an obvious question, but what can sport offer that something else can't within a marketing, advertising medium as a brand like yourself?
Well, certainly for me, sports allows people to recognize themselves in what they see on the advertisement. So if you look at many of the advertisement out there for any type of product, they always try to create a very familiar situation whereby people can identify themselves with that situation, so they are also looking at the product. That comes naturally with sport, because suddenly sport is by definition something that, if you're passionate about, is something that you either do already or is either something that you aspire to be starting to do. And so when you do have to put together a campaign to promote your brand and your product, really the product is just an accessory to the sport. It's an accessory to what the person in that campaign or in their marketing is doing by enjoying something that everyone that has experienced that feeling will be enjoying the same way. So really the product is just an addition to that enjoyment, to that feeling of power, that feeling of satisfaction of achieving your goal. If you need to lift something, if you need to score a try, or so, like if anything, the marketing do come a bit easier and the message is a bit more transferable, because people knows very well what is the feeling and what it means wearing, for example, in our case, an apparel related to while you are experiencing that feeling. And so the customer in the mind already knows that if you have a product that makes you feel confident, that makes you feel cool, that makes you feel more energized and ready to achieve your results, it's a lot easier to get the message across than it will be for any other product, really.
Sport as a proposition, has a heritage like yourselves and from that sponsorship business from going backwards. In terms of you as a business, what's the single most important thing you consider when looking at a sports partnership per se, whether it's Tigers, an amateur team, because they all involve a level of partnership and servicing off the back, don't they?
No, absolutely. So obviously for us, particularly in these next couple of years, we wanted to focus very much into rugby and really own that niche, if we call it that way. I think what we look in a partnership is the strength of the underlying customer base, particularly now, or the supporter base, that then can become potential customers for us. Something that we obviously are doing by transitioning from being just a kit supplier, where obviously you will be looking at getting the maximum exposure and the maximum number of clubs possible within your portfolio. Now that we're moving into more of a retail or direct to consumer proposition, what we're interested in is what is the attachment of the supporter base to that club. If we are to partner with that club, is there an audience that we could obviously tap into and get our message across and say why we want to build that community, how we want to build that community? And for example, the partnership with you is the perfect situation, because not only you are a massive and probably one of the most forward-thinking out there clubs in Europe from in the rugby world, but also you have a very loyal supporter fan base that is in a very populated area, a catchment area, that suddenly can become a customer for the brand if they like what we propose to them. And then it's up to us to obviously engage with them, makes them feel part of the community, makes them feel, what, I'll buy merchandising from Tigers because it's supplied by Samurai, but actually they've done that nice product that my daughter needs or my son needs, and I'll buy them from them directly. So that's what we're looking into from a pure business perspective. Then obviously the brand alignment is key. We wouldn't be partnering with someone that doesn't share our values, or someone that doesn't want to go in the direction that we're trying to go, because we need partners that wants to do a journey with us.
That's fair and unprompted, so thank you very much for that. Off the back as such, you are far younger than me, and I don't consider myself that old, but when you're 20 years and you're maybe back in Italy or what have you, what would you like your legacy to be on Samurai, or on your contribution to the business world? Have you ever given it any thought, or am I putting you on the spot now?
No, it is something that I do think about it, because it's always about what does motivate you to do what you do. And for me, more than a legacy, I always been interested, and this is the reason why I left well-off investment banking career, because I felt like I wasn't building a project. I wasn't building something that could be, survive myself, and be there after me even. So for me, it's all really about building the project, building the business, and trying to get to a size that is self-sustainable, and a size where the business survives even without me, possibly made myself redundant at some point. So the legacy I've been able to, in 20-30 years, to say, what, we have built that, we took the brand in a certain state and we brought it to a different level, and people recognizing that effort and that work is what I see as legacy. I think as a business, ultimately our goal is to try and develop rugby commercially and do our part from the apparel perspective, in the sense that it's one of the 10 major sports it's one of the 10 major sports in the world that probably hasn't yet commercially achieved the levels that it has the potential to achieve. And I strongly believe that in the next 10 years, with the new wave of people coming in, like yourself, like myself, if we continue to do our piece of work, it will reach higher pinnacles. And for me, part of the rugby community, being maybe 10 years from now, said, what, Samurai was really one of the first to believe in trying to have a brand that was rugby inspired, but was cool and attracting, not just technical supplier of stash. So that is a legacy from a business perspective that we would like to create.
We have a mantra here that you leave the badge better than you find it. So we're in essence guardians, for myself, guardians of the Tigers badge, and we pick it up, we leave it. It sounds like something similar for you, but actually there's another level. In essence, we're new to the sport of rugby, and how do we want to leave rugby in a better place, whenever that may be, and we're old and what have you. And it does sound pretty similar from what I'm hearing.
If you think about it, just to make it easier for whoever will be watching this podcast, obviously, if you look at what Nike did with the NBA back in the 80s, associating with Michael Jordan, and then doing a journey with that, sport to become a worldwide sport, which it wasn't back in the 80s and early 90s. Similarly, somehow football and Adidas, FIFA and Adidas, did partner very early on in the 70s, and then transformed the business commercially and made football a lot more attractive than it used to be commercially. There are many examples, and there are more with American football. There is another example, particularly the college American football, which then developed commercially because of the partnership between a company that could make the players appealing, which then reflects on how the players become stars. It reflects on how the clubs can leverage the exposure of these players, and then it's a snowball effect that benefits everyone, really.
We've talked a bit about legacy, and one thing you referred to at the start was around the startup in your 20s, I believe it was. and not achieving probably the heights that you wanted it to. In terms of your biggest learnings from your business career so far, whether it's that or another, what you know, I would never say failure or what have you, but a learning opportunity. What's been the biggest thing you've learned or had to learn in business that you could talk about today as a, you know, to almost stop people making the same mistakes or accelerate their own learning as part of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest learning is that you can't do it all on your own, and without a very good team that you need to craft over time, and you won't go very far. There is an element of being able to pull everyone in the same direction, but we wouldn't have been able to achieve what we achieved at Samurai without the team that we built in the last 18 months. And obviously, the team will never be set forever. Things do change, and some expertise come and go. But you need to have a core team that you trust and you feel like are your partners in the journey you're making, and do share the same vision and beliefs. Among the biggest learnings in my, you know, short career so far is timing. Timing is very important. Like it's not something that we have full control of, but it's something that what I was mentioning in the beginning is like you know, people talks about luck. Luck is, for me, is when preparation meet opportunities, which is a saying from one of my favorite author, which is Seneca, which is you know, an ancient writer. You know, because indeed, like, timing is about being prepared when an opportunity comes and be able to code that opportunity. So really, you build your perfect timing by just working and preparing yourself for what you believe that opportunity will be. And that has been the biggest learning, including when my early startup in my early 20s, where we did have a product that could have worked. It had obviously some flaws, but it wasn't the right time and the right market, and the setup wasn't right. And so there are many examples that you can refer to of situations where the same business model worked for someone and didn't work for someone else. And I think is a combination of timing, indeed, being prepared, the team that you have to do that project, as well as execution. There is a lot of it's a lot easy to talk, but then it's about executing. And sometimes it's better to focus on executing one thing very well, than trying to do 10 at the same time and not doing neither of that well.
No, brilliant. And final question, which we kind of like to ask everyone who appears on here, for the benefit of anyone watching that might be starting early out in their career or might fancy a career similar to yourselves as such. Choose one book that they could read that's either inspired you or you would, you know, has given you the most advice as part of your journey as such. What would be your one book recommendation?
Certainly, I'm a heavy reader myself, but one book that one book that did inspire me actually doing Samurai was Shoe Dog, from the founder of Nike, which is a great book that shows you that in spite of if you are into entrepreneurship and so on, in spite of Nike being what Nike is, obviously there's been 50 years, and particularly the first 20 years were of big struggles and hurdles to overcome before becoming what Nike is today and everyone knows. That is a book that inspired me in the journey in doing Samurai, for sure, and that I read while preparing the transaction with Samurai. Generally speaking, one book that I really, probably one of my favorite books is 100 Years of Loneliness from Marquez, which is the prize for literature back in the 70s or 80s, I think, which is a fantastic book that describes indeed magical world but it really goes deep into the humankind and the various behaviors of people in various situations. Because it's really, for me, one key part in everything you do business-wise or life-wise, is contextualize why someone is reacting a certain way in that moment. It doesn't mean that someone is bad or good. Like there is always a context that gives you a reason for a behavior or for a certain reaction. And so learning how to do those is probably very, very important in navigating business and life's hurdle, really.
Two very different books then, but and two books. So okay, discussion, but I understand your premise behind it, and thank you for that. And again, extending a thank you for joining us. Thanks for being so open. There's lots of insights there, very interesting, and we look forward to seeing more of Samurai and the Tigers moving forward, and more people in Samurai moving forward as such, as a result of the growth of the brand moving forward. So thank you, Stefano. Really interesting, and have a good day.